Karoline Leavitt believed she could embarrass Jasmine Crockett on live television and walk away without consequences. What she didn't foresee was a lawsuit, undeniable evidence, and a woman who chose calm precision over chaos and won without ever raising her voice. It all unfolded on an ordinary Wednesday. Emails were being sent, court preparations were in motion, and Jasmine Crockett was reviewing deposition notes with her attorney, Brandon Keyes, in his Dallas office. Then Samira, Jasmine's chief of staff, entered the room holding her phone. Her expression wasn't alarmed, but it wasn't casual either. "I think you'll want to see this," she said, handing Jasmine the phone. On the screen was a forwarded message, not a press release, not a legal document, but a screenshot from a verified source. Karoline Leavitt had written directly to Jasmine. No lawyers, no team, just her words. "I know this message might not reach you, but I have to try. I'm sorry I went too far. I thought I was being brave, but I realize now I was reckless. This has cost me more than I ever expected. Please, stop the lawsuit." It was short and simple, but it landed harder than anything Karoline had said in months. Brandon leaned in to read, his brow tightening. "She's trying to control the story. This isn't remorse. It's strategy." Jasmine didn't react. She simply handed the phone back. "Don't leak it. Let someone else do that if they want." 2 hours later, the message appeared on Twitter. An anonymous political journalist had posted it, and within 20 minutes, it was everywhere. Podcasts, late-night panels, and news shows. The 88-word message set social media ablaze. Some called it a human moment. "She's breaking. Let her go," one commenter wrote. Others disagreed. "You can't attack someone in public and then beg in private." Cable networks jumped on the story. CNN ran a segment titled, "The Power of Public Silence." MSNBC brought in a panel of former officials to discuss it. Fox News criticized the leak as a privacy violation, but didn't question its authenticity. One thing was certain: this had become more than a lawsuit. It was now a cultural moment. Back in Dallas, Samira watched notifications flood in as donations spiked and emails poured through, some urging forgiveness, others demanding accountability. "People want a response," she said. Jasmine shook her head. "They already have it." "What do you mean?" I didn't reply. No tweet, no statement, just silence. And that silence echoed louder than any response could. Even neutral voices began weighing in. A veteran strategist from Philadelphia tweeted, "This isn't just restraint. It's discipline. It's power." Meanwhile, Karoline's team scrambled. They hadn't expected the leak. Her PR representative suggested a public statement to soften her image, but Karoline refused. "They think I'm weak. I won't give them the satisfaction," she snapped during a Zoom call. Her voice cracked slightly. That very call was leaked. A journalist in Minneapolis quoted her words. "I'm not begging. I'm setting boundaries." But the public had seen her message. It was clearly begging. That night, Jasmine turned off her phone. She didn't need updates. She already knew how the story was unfolding. She reheated leftovers, sat in silence, and let the world interpret the moment however it wanted. Across the country, people debated a message that wasn't meant to be public, but revealed everything. For months, Karoline had mocked serious issues for political clout. But when consequences arrived, she wanted to rewrite the rules. Jasmine, however, stayed exactly the same, calm, firm, and composed. Yet behind the scenes, something was shifting. Some called it grace, others called it strategy. To most watching, Jasmine's silence had become the story itself. 3 days passed. No tweets, no interviews, no leaks. By the 4th day, the Boston Globe published an op-ed titled "The Woman Who Said Nothing and Changed Everything." It explored the strength of deliberate silence, how its absence could fill every room. High school students discussed it in civics class. Morning shows analyzed it as the psychology of silence as power. A pastor in Birmingham built an entire sermon around it, calling Jasmine's response an example of quiet courage. Jasmine hadn't asked for any of this. She kept working, attending meetings, voting on bills, meeting local business owners. But something had shifted. When she entered a room, people paid attention. They stood a bit taller. They listened more intently. At a late-night meeting, Brandon laid out a stack of newspaper clippings. "This is what your silence did." Jasmine didn't even glance at them. "I didn't do it for headlines." "That's exactly why it worked," Brandon said. Samira smiled from the corner. "They're calling you the blueprint, quiet thunder, still water." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "I just didn't reply." "And that," Brandon said, "is why it mattered. She kept baiting you, and you never gave her what she wanted." Meanwhile, Karoline's explanations fell apart. Her leaked message felt contrived and defensive, and people knew it. Karoline first claimed her email had been taken out of context, only to later say it wasn't even written by her. The contradiction didn't help. A body language expert on national television analyzed Karoline's recent video statement frame by frame and concluded she appeared to be acting sincere rather than genuinely feeling it. Meanwhile, Jasmine stayed silent, but public attention around her only grew. In Little Rock, a group of veterans released an open letter backing her position, writing, "We've served where dignity is the only real currency." Congresswoman Crockett shows that under pressure. In Cleveland, a local artist painted a mural of Jasmine mid-sentence. Focused eyes, head slightly tilted as if she were about to speak. The mural went viral. People realized it wasn't her silence that mattered. It was that others had finally started listening. Even those once neutral began to choose sides. A former political commentator who had previously admired Karoline's unfiltered edge posted a short message. "There's a difference between edge and damage. Jasmine taught me that." Karoline tried to push back. She went live with a 10-minute video titled, "The Truth They Don't Want You to Hear." The thumbnail was confrontational, the tone defensive. She insisted she was the real victim who had only said what needed to be said. But the comments told another story. Needed to be said or easy to say when no one challenges you? You had a microphone. She had history. You mocked her. She stayed silent. You blinked first. Her silence had become a weapon Karoline couldn't counter. The usual outrage cycle wasn't working. There was no one left to accuse, just her own words facing Jasmine's restraint. In a private meeting with her lawyer, Karoline broke down. "I thought if I apologized, she'd meet me halfway," she said, eyes red. "She didn't even acknowledge me." Her lawyer paused before replying, "You're not used to being ignored. That's the difference." Karoline looked away, speechless. Back in Dallas, Jasmine attended Sunday service at her neighborhood church. She quietly took a seat in the back pew. A few people smiled at her warmly, but no one intruded. Afterward, an older man approached, not for a photo, but to say, "Thank you for not lowering yourself." Jasmine nodded softly. Some things don't deserve a reply. While Jasmine remained composed, Karoline's career began to crumble, and not because of online backlash. The first real hit came quietly through an email from a Scottsdale-based wellness brand that had sponsored her podcast for 18 months. The message was brief. "We are no longer comfortable associating our brand with your platform. Effective immediately." Her assistant printed it and left it on her desk. Karoline stared at the page for a long moment, then flipped it over as if to make it disappear. It didn't end there. That afternoon, her booking agent canceled an upcoming segment on a national morning show, explaining vaguely that the producers were shifting to a different tone. Karoline knew what that meant. Her confident persona, quick remarks, sharp smile, now read as cold and careless, At home in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, she paced the living room. Her phone had gone quiet. Group chats were dead. Even her fiancé seemed distant, avoiding her gaze at dinner. "Why are you acting like I killed someone?" she asked him quietly. He sighed. "Because you won't admit what you did." "I didn't do anything," she replied. He stood and left the room. She opened the fridge, staring into it as if the answer might be there. Meanwhile in Dallas, Jasmine finished a school community meeting. She didn't mention Karoline once, but the producer from the political panel where the controversy began emailed Brandon, Jasmine's aide. The subject line read simply, "For the record." Inside, he confirmed that Karoline's remarks had been unscripted and intentionally off-topic, attaching internal messages proving she had asked to go rogue during pre-show planning. Brandon printed it immediately. It was no longer just a PR issue. It was potential legal leverage. Back in Washington, Jasmine attended a housing discrimination hearing. She asked only 2 precise questions. Later that night, a short clip of her listening intently went viral again, captioned, "When stillness says more than spin ever could." Desperate to recover, Karoline posted a video exclusively for her paying supporters. No makeup, no script, just her in a hoodie on her bed. "I know people are upset," she began, "but I don't owe anyone a performance." Her voice wavered. She couldn't stop fidgeting with her hair. Within hours, the clip leaked publicly. Critics called it damage control disguised as defiance. Supporters said she looked hurt. To everyone else, she looked trapped. And for the first time, no one was rushing to defend her. The moment people started seeing her as unraveling rather than in control was when things truly began to collapse. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when Jasmine entered Brandon's office. Carrying a brown paper bag from a nearby sandwich shop, she placed it on his desk like it was just another ordinary day. The office felt unusually still for being so close to the trial date. Outside, the faint hum of traffic filled the air, while inside, tension hung silently. Brandon looked up from his pile of legal notes. "You're calm," he observed. Jasmine gave a small shrug. "I've been through worse," and she had. She'd weathered smear campaigns, coded questions from donors, even threats during her first election. But this time was different. Not because it was louder, but because it finally felt clear. Samira entered the office, tablet in hand. "The New York Times wants a comment." "No," Jasmine replied instantly. "They're suggesting your silence is a campaign tactic now." "It's not strategy," Jasmine said. "It's a boundary." Samira hesitated, then nodded. "It's working," and it was. Jasmine wasn't appearing on camera, yet she was everywhere in the public conversation. Old speeches and interviews about leadership and identity were resurfacing across social media. Without speaking a word, she had become the focus, but behind the scenes she was far from passive. "Let's review the witness list," she said. "I want to know exactly who's testifying and how solid they are." Brandon handed her a sheet. "We've got the panel producer, 2 former interns, and a campaign aide from Karoline's 2022 run. All ready to testify. Anyone seem nervous?" Jasmine asked. "The assistant was," Brandon said. "But after hearing what Karoline said about you on that podcast, she called back. Said she's ready." "Good." There was no pride in her tone, only focus, like someone finally assembling a puzzle that made sense. Samira glanced at her phone. A former conservative donor just wrote an op-ed, saying the party should rethink what it rewards. "They won't," Jasmine said quietly. "Not until it cost them something." The room went silent. Brandon leaned back. "You know what people are saying about you?" "What?" "That you're the one who doesn't flinch." Jasmine looked at him. "I do flinch. I just do it privately." And she did. At night, when the calls stopped and the emails quieted. Sitting alone in her living room, she'd scroll through her phone only to delete comments disguised as concern. "You're better than this. Let it go." She erased them all because she knew what they really meant. Be quiet. Be smaller. But she'd done that before. Smiled when it hurt, held back when it cost her, softened her words to make others comfortable. And still, it was never enough. So this time she said nothing, and stood firm. Brandon noticed. "You're showing people what boundaries look like." "No," Jasmine corrected. "I'm showing them what not folding looks like." He paused. "Do you ever regret not replying to her message?" "No, because it wasn't for me," Jasmine said. "It was for the audience." She didn't want forgiveness. She wanted relief. That line stayed with Brandon. He jotted it on his notepad and underlined it twice. Later that week, Jasmine visited a small community garden in Oak Cliff. A group of middle school girls waited nervously, holding handmade signs. One, no older than 12, handed her a folded note that read, "Thank you for not letting them talk to you like you don't matter." Jasmine smiled and slipped the note into her coat. "What's your name?" "I'm Amira," the girl said. "You like to write?" The girl nodded, then keep writing. "Tell the truth." Samira stood a few steps back, quietly watching. As Jasmine's calm became a symbol, Karoline was preparing one last attempt to twist the story, and by the week's end, it would change everything again. Jasmine Crockett had become something no one, especially Karoline, expected. A symbol of strength and deliberate leadership. In Santa Fe, a civics teacher paused her lesson on accountability, projected Jasmine's quote, "It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about relief," and asked her students, "What do we expect from those who cross the line?" In Portland, a bookstore displayed a table labeled, "Speak Truth Without Yelling." The first book was a biography of Shirley Chisholm. Beside it, a transcript of Jasmine's now viral congressional speech from 2 years prior. None of this had been planned. But that's how momentum works. Sometimes it builds itself around you. Jasmine hadn't changed her tone or message. That's why people believed her. She didn't treat it like her big break, just her responsibility. Meanwhile, Karoline resurfaced after days of silence. Appearing on a small conservative talk show filmed in Boise, grainy footage, oversized flag, one host. The host smirked. "Some say you're just saying what others are afraid to say, especially about Jasmine Crockett." "The race narrative's getting old, right?" Karoline laughed. "Well, I wouldn't say you're wrong." 10 seconds. That's all it took. The clip spread online within hours. People weren't shocked anymore. They were tired. Tired of excuses. Tired of seeing bigotry passed off as opinion. Brandon watched the video twice, then sent it to Jasmine with no message. He didn't need one. That same day, a journalist from the Los Angeles Tribune called. "We're pulling the op-ed from Karoline's camp. We just can't support it anymore." Brandon thanked them and hung up. In Dallas, Jasmine sat at a round table with social workers. No one mentioned the lawsuit, just the work ahead. Afterward, an older woman approached her, silver in her braids and tired eyes. She held out her phone showing the Boise clip. "She said this last night," the woman said, "and I thought about my daughter. How she's watching this happen again, just like I did." Jasmine glanced at the screen. "I know," she said softly, "but she's not our focus." "Then what is?" the woman asked, "Making sure we don't." Jasmine sat quietly in her car for a while before finally starting the engine. Her phone buzzed again, another message asking for a comment, but she flipped it over, face down, and drove off. The real fallout, however, was only beginning. Within a day, 2 more companies ended their partnerships with Karoline. One was a skincare subscription brand, the other a startup that had once featured her in a national ad campaign. Neither issued a statement. They simply removed her photos and moved on. Even the conservative outlet, Western Ledger, which had stood by her from the start, quietly ended her weekly column. A source told reporters, "She's become more of a liability than an asset." Still, Karoline didn't back down. She began posting a series of short, self-produced videos, fast-cut monologues filmed in her kitchen. In one, she declared, "They want to silence me, but I'm not going anywhere." Comments were split, though fewer than before. Engagement fell, sponsors stayed silent, and the followers who once supported her started disappearing. This wasn't just about losing deals anymore. It was about fading relevance. While Karoline struggled to stay visible, Jasmine found herself under sharper scrutiny. Then, an unexpected call changed everything. It was an early Sunday in San Antonio when Brandon's phone rang. The caller ID was unknown, but the voice was calm and deliberate. "My name is Tasha Denton," she said. "I worked on Karoline's last congressional campaign. I have something your team needs to see." Brandon asked for a secure email and told her to send the files. Minutes later, an email arrived. PDF scans of campaign prep sheets, color-coded notes, pre-written comebacks, and a section labeled "Lines to Disrupt Progressive Women of Color." One line jumped out. "If she mentions race, accuse her of playing the victim. Pivot to personal responsibility. Don't let her lead the tone." Brandon printed the pages, then called Jasmine. "It's not just reckless," he said. "It was rehearsed." Jasmine didn't ask for proof. She trusted him. "Keep building," she replied. The legal team was already solid, but now their foundation was stronger than ever. What once appeared to be a heated debate moment was now proven to be part of a deliberate strategy, planned rhetoric disguised as spontaneous exchange. Later that night, another message landed in Brandon's inbox. A producer who had worked with Karoline on a political talk show offered to provide a sworn statement confirming she practiced interrupting women of color in mock debates, saying it kept them emotional and off-script. The producer wrote that Karoline often seemed to be testing how far she could go, just because she could. That was the missing piece. Back at Jasmine's office, the atmosphere was tense but focused. Samira looked up from a legal brief as Brandon dropped the files on her desk. "We're done asking the court to assume," he said. "We'll show them." Samira skimmed the first page. "She planned it all," she murmured. Jasmine paused, then said quietly, "Then it's not about me. It's about the playbook." That night, Jasmine sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of cold tea. She wasn't thinking about Karoline anymore. She was thinking about the next woman who'd have to face the same subtle disrespect disguised as debate. She thought of how many women had softened their tone just to be heard. This wasn't personal anymore. It was systemic. Meanwhile, Karoline was preparing for another live broadcast. A few smaller outlets still hosted her, places where outrage could still generate clicks. She went live just before midnight, an American flag slightly tilted behind her. Looking into the camera, she said, "You can cancel a person, but you can't cancel the truth." She smirked, the same smirk from the debate. But this time, it didn't land. Hours later, her video appeared online alongside the leaked campaign notes. Her face, her words, and the internal strategy laid out side by side. By noon, the clip had over 4 million views. The Guardian headline read, "At best, this wasn't a slip. It was a script." Public opinion shifted overnight. Even those who had stayed neutral couldn't anymore. A college student from Tulsa tweeted, "This wasn't a debate gone wrong. It was humiliation by design." In Sacramento, a group of high school seniors launched a podcast episode titled "How Power Protects Itself," using Karoline's leaked notes as their opening case study. Jasmine didn't share or comment on the post. Still, she read every word of the printed transcript left on her desk. Samira, watching closely, asked quietly, "You want to respond?" Jasmine shook her head. "Not yet." Brandon, leaning by the door, smiled faintly. "She just gave us her entire defense, and doesn't even realize it." Karoline realized it later. 2 days after, she called a team meeting. Only 3 people came: a new assistant, a publicist intern, and herself. Sitting at the head of a long table that once fit a larger circle, she said, "They're turning everything against me." Her eyes darted between the few faces left. No one replied. She leaned forward, her tone softer. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it already had. The next move wouldn't come from her. It would come from behind closed doors, attached to a number that would stun everyone." When Karoline's name vanished from the speaker lineup of a major conservative event in Kansas City, it was already too late to spin the story. No public statement was made. Organizers simply removed her picture and informed attendees of a schedule change. But reporters knew what that meant, and so did Karoline. She called one of her last media contacts, someone she'd worked with years earlier. "Can you help me get ahead of this?" she asked, trying to sound calm. The voice on the line hesitated. "You'd have to say something true first." Then the call ended. Back in Dallas, Jasmine's legal team finalized their brief, 63 pages of verified material. No filler, no exaggeration, just documentation, emails, planning notes, and sworn statements from 4 former collaborators, all pointing to deliberate provocation and public humiliation. Across the table, Jasmine reviewed the pages with her attorney, Brandon Keyes. Karoline Leavitt thought she could embarrass Jasmine Crockett live on TV and walk away untouched. What she didn't expect was a lawsuit, supported by solid evidence and a woman who used composure, not chaos, as her weapon. It was a Wednesday, an ordinary workday. Emails were flying, court prep underway, and Jasmine was reviewing deposition notes when her chief of staff, Samira, walked in holding her phone. Her expression wasn't alarmed, but it wasn't casual either. "You might want to see this," she said, handing it over. On screen was a screenshot, not a press release or legal notice, just a personal message. It was from Karoline, unfiltered. "I know this might not reach you, but I have to try. I'm sorry. I pushed too far. I thought I was being bold, but I was careless. This has cost me more than I imagined. I'm asking you to drop the lawsuit, please." It wasn't dramatic or long, but it struck deeper than anything Karoline had said before. Brandon read it over her shoulder, his eyes narrowing. "She's trying to change the narrative. That's not remorse, it's strategy." Jasmine didn't react. She simply returned the phone. "Don't leak it," she said. "Let someone else do that if they want." 2 hours later, it was everywhere. A political journalist anonymously posted the screenshot. Within 20 minutes, podcasts and late-night panels were talking about it. The 88-word message went viral. Some called it human. "She's breaking," one commenter said. "Let her go." Others disagreed. "You don't get to attack someone publicly, then plead privately." News outlets jumped in. CNN aired the power of public silence. MSNBC hosted a panel on accountability. Fox News called it a privacy violation, but didn't deny it was real. It was no longer just a legal matter. It had become a national conversation. In Jasmine's office, notifications poured in. Donations surged. Emails flooded her inbox, some urging mercy, others demanding justice. "People want a statement," Samira said. Jasmine shook her head. "They already have it. What do you mean?" I didn't respond. No tweets, no interviews, just silence. And that silence spoke louder than any reply. Even neutral voices began weighing in. A veteran strategist from Philadelphia tweeted, "This isn't just restraint, it's power." Karoline's camp scrambled. They hadn't planned for the leak. Her PR consultant pushed for a response, but Karoline refused. "They think I'm weak. I won't give them that," she snapped during a Zoom call, her voice trembling slightly. Someone leaked that recording too. Headlines quoted her, "I'm not begging, I'm setting boundaries." But the public had already seen the message. It was, undeniably, a plea. That night, Jasmine powered off her phone. She didn't need to track the coverage. She knew exactly how it was unfolding. She reheated leftovers, sat at her kitchen table, and ate in silence.